Jamie Lee Curtis is an iconic actress who has aged like a fine wine. She's been around for a long time, and as such, she's got many a story to tell. There's no shortage of fun facts about her that any fan of hers, be it through Halloween or Knives Out or anything in between, might be interested to learn. You'd have to be a real super fan to get them all. So be sure to stick around till the end to hear each one, so you can decide your favorite and test yourself by seeing how many of these you already knew. Let's get started, starting with one of the more known but still important ones. She hails from a famous family of actors. Indeed, Jamie Lee Curtis is continuing a lineage of film and stage actors that dates back a long ways. Her father, Tony Curtis, was a very prolific actor whose career peak came in the 50s and 60s. He's said to have acted in over 100 films. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor in 1959 and won the Golden Globe Award for World Film Favorite Male in both 1958 and 1961. Janet Leigh's story is very similar, with her stardom coming at a similar time frame. She was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress and actually won the Golden Globe's version of this award for her role in Psycho, likely the most iconic film either of Jamie Leigh's parents worked on. Janet additionally had a stage career on Broadway. Each of the two careers spanned in the ballpark of 60 years, and both were still featured in films even up to their last few years alive. It's notable that Jamie Lee Curtis's name feels like an homage to both of her parents, with her father's last name and the Leigh clearly being based on her mother's last name. She's carrying on each of their lineages even long after they split up in the 60s. This would make you think she dreamed of following in their footsteps this whole time. However, next, growing up, she never thought that she'd become an actress herself. Indeed, being raised by Hollywood stars, you'd think for sure that Jamie would have always seen herself in the spotlight one day too. But that's actually not the case. According to an interview with The New Yorker, she told them that she actually dreamed of becoming a police officer in her younger days. So why didn't this happen? It's all due to her grades. The way she tells the story, she didn't have the grades to become a police officer, so she became an actress essentially as a plan B. That sounds a little bit backwards now, doesn't it? But it's true, and it ties into our next surprisingly fact about her. And Jamie Lee Curtis was actually really bad at school. It's true, Jamie Lee in her schooling days had a D average, with an 840 combined SAT that made her a hard sell to most of the country's universities. Ultimately, the University of the Pacific in Stockton, California was the only one willing to accept her, and that was likely a result of nepotism, as this is where her mother graduated. Janet Leigh was the most famous person to come out of this school. She explained to The New Yorker that if she came up today, she'd likely be diagnosed with a learning disability of some kind, and remarked that while she loves to read, she's bad at retaining information. That's a big problem in academics since U.S. schools are practically testing nothing but retention. She went on to say she had moved to 3 different high schools in the span of 4 years, painting a picture of a difficult education. Up next, Halloween is not only her most famous film, but it was actually her acting debut. It's not exactly the norm that someone's first film becomes their most iconic, but that was likely the case with Jamie Lee Curtis. She made her acting debut in Halloween as the leading lady. This too could arguably be chalked up to nepotism of a different sort, since her casting was seen as part of the film's homage to Psycho, which of course starred her mother, the original Scream Queen. But regardless of the reason she got the role, she certainly made it her own and became an icon of the big screen herself. Now for a note on her modern career. Now, sadly, you won't be seeing her in the sequel to Knives Out. In 2019, Jamie Lee Curtis was one of the standouts of the sleeper hit mystery film Knives Out, which made enough box office bank that it quickly greenlit a sequel. But she won't be returning for the follow-up, Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery, which releases worldwide at the end of this year. However, that's actually the case for everyone in the first film, aside from the main character, Benoit Blanc, played by Daniel Craig. This kind of thing is actually fairly normal for mystery stories, as most major cast members would be a suspect for the crime in question, and it'd be odd to reuse previous suspects for unrelated crimes. Still, bit of a shame we won't be seeing her around this time. Now for another career of Jamie Lee's that you might not know. In addition to being an actress, she's also a children's book author. That's right, since 1993 she's been penning children's books. She's written over a dozen thus far and has become a New York Times best-selling author in the process. She's evidently even managed to write a whole book in about 2 hours. Her top sellers include titles like Today I Feel Silly and Other Moods That Make My Day. Now, this will be a bit of a mood whiplash here, but next she has a history of substance abuse and has been open about it, though that was not always the case as she kept her Vicodin addiction secret for about 10 years. She explained to Variety that there was a strangely controlled drug addict and alcoholic, having separated it from her work and being very careful about the time of day that she partook. Nonetheless, her addiction was bad enough that she at one point stole pills from a friend of hers, only to write her an apologetic letter later. Thankfully, she sought help after reading an article about painkiller addiction in 1993 and has been clean and sober for a long time now. And now for a much lighter subject. Another fact is that she happens to be the godmother of Jake Gyllenhaal. Now, isn't that unique? Jamie is indeed very close with Jake's parents, director Stephen Gyllenhaal, as well as screenwriter Naomi Foner. The Hollywood family is expanding and taking on yet more branches. One day they'll rule the entire world. I look forward to it. And speaking of her expanding family, up next, she experienced love at first sight with her husband Christopher Guest. Isn't that romantic? Well, to be fair, they weren't in the same room together when she first saw him. The legend goes that she saw him for the first time watching him in This Is Spinal Tap, the cult classic mockumentary. And during the airing, she turned to her friend and said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to marry that guy." Not one to let her dreams stay dreams, she indeed hooked up with Guest and they've been married for 36 years with a number of adopted children. When asked about the secret to a long marriage by Today, her answer was as simple as it gets: don't get divorced. She actually joked about writing a book on marriage titled Don't Leave. While you ruminate on that, let's get into our final fact, and perhaps the most surprising one of all. And Jamie Lee Curtis actually doesn't like horror movies. In a conversation with Cinema Blend, she dropped this incredibly ironic nugget without a hint of irony. She told them, quote, "I do not like horror movies. I do not say this for a joke, although it gets a laugh. I really don't," end quote. She explained that there was nothing she liked about being scared and makes herself sound like a bit of a wimp as she said that even the classic animated film Aladdin used to scare her. She reiterated that was not joking before talking about the scene where Jafar transforms into a dragon with glowing red eyes, something that evidently shook her to the core. The quote doesn't seem to mention what age she was when she experienced this, so I guess we can just presume that Aladdin is still a horror film to her even to this day. This actually gives a lot of context as to why she was so good in her role in Halloween. If a cartoon dragon can get it done, Michael Myers up close and personal should have no problem whatsoever scaring the bejesus out of her. No wonder her horrified screams felt so genuine. And that is all the time for today's video. So how did you do on our little test? What's your score out of 10? We're going off the honor system here, so no fibbing. Which of these fun facts were your favorite? Surprised at the unique life that Jamie Lee Curtis has seemingly led? Is there anyone else you'd like to see us do a similar video on? Be sure to let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and until next time, thanks for watching.